Jason Hagholm here. Welcome to episode 3 of Jason and the Gentleman. I am, of course, of Jason Hagholm, and this is the gentleman, Josh Hill. Josh, first of all, before we get going, happy belated Thanksgiving, as it was Canadian Thanksgiving yesterday. How was your Thanksgiving weekend?
Yeah, happy Thanksgiving, man. It was, it was fun, I guess. Not a whole lot going on. Took the kids to a pumpkin patch and did that kind of thing, which was fun. But other than that, it was kind of uneventful. But it's okay. I'm in the middle of moving, so everything's chaotic right now. So it was just a good downtime. How about you?
Yeah. My Thanksgiving was good. Spent Thanksgiving with my side of the family yesterday. Spent the weekend with the wife's side of the family. The kids like a pumpkin patch.
Oh yeah, I loved it. My 10-year-old stepson, he loved it, but my 2-year-old was going nuts. So it was fun.
Well, it's good to hear that, and yes, of course, happy belated Thanksgiving. One of the best times of the year, as you get to spend time with your family. But MMA, Josh, this past weekend, it's really like the entertainment value for the sport, for not just UFC and every promotion really. Let's start breaking down this past weekend's UFC on Fight Island 5. We had you break down kind of the main event. It's a guy in Marlon Moraes very well, having spent half an hour with him. Suffered a tough loss to Cory Sandhagen. A spinning wheel kick to the side of the head at the end of the midway through the second round. And all in all, Cory Sandhagen, this was the fight I thought that could really put him on the map. And I think exclamation point done. He's definitely on the map and in serious contention for the UFC Bantamweight Championship.
Yeah. This is. I knew this would be definitely a tough fight for Marlon, because Sandhagen is a very big bantamweight. He's 5'11", so he's super long, but he knows how to use his reach really, really well. But yeah, I just watching it, I thought Marlon looked a little bit like he was rushing things early. He wasn't really setting up his big shots and only throwing big shots and coming up short, giving up that reach advantage. So he didn't look, as usual, I thought. But Sandhagen did look really, really, really good. And you could tell as the fight progressed, which I thought would happen, Sandhagen would pick up the steam a bit and start getting in his groove. And, he caught him with that crazy, beautiful spinning, wheel kick to the head there. And it definitely rock Marlon for sure, but I think it was a bit of an early stoppage. I've seen a lot worse for sure, but he got hit and then he actually rolled, consciously to kind of get back to a better position, and then almost fully pulled guard by the time the refs stopped the fight. But like I said, I've seen worse, and it's a tough job for a ref. I'd hate to be one.
It definitely was. I thought it was a fine stoppage. Marlon definitely was wobbled, and just how he went down, you never want to take the risk of someone taking too much damage, as we've seen sometimes refs let fights go on way too long when you don't need to. But as I said before, for Cory Sandhagen, this was a guy who was supposed to fight Frankie Edgar at the end of 2019. That fight got scrapped because Frankie took the fight with Korean Zombie in South Korea towards the end of last year. And now he gets the fight, and he comes out and he puts on an amazing performance, shakes off the rust of that tough loss to Aljamain Sterling. And Josh, this bantamweight division is really starting to get jam-packed. They still haven't announced, as of this recording, Peter Yan and Aljamain Sterling for the Bantamweight Championship. There's so much more interest right now, as we said. Sandhagen, TJ Dillashaw is only about 3 months away from coming back. Bantamweight, you say it's all, as you're a bantamweight fighter, it's one of the most exciting divisions, but in the UFC right now, it's easily like 1B to 1A of the lightweight division.
Yeah, I agree. I agree totally with you. And yeah, the division is stacked. I don't know why they haven't announced a date yet for the Sterling, or for sure that he's getting the shot, because I do think he deserves it. That fight has to happen. I think Peter Yan and Sterling, and then I like to see Sandhagen versus, it's hard to say right now, maybe as a number one contender fight. But yeah, you got, like you said, TJ coming back, but he's a cheater, man. I'm not into that. You know what I mean? And I know TJ, and I got along with TJ, but I think he should get even longer than he did. It's not like it was a banned substance or anything like that. Things that can be questionable. It was blatant cheating, and when he admitted. But I just how long has he been doing that for? That really kind of tarnished my respect for him in that sense as a fighter. But yeah, him back in the mix definitely makes it interesting. You could see. I'd like to see. Maybe I'd like to see Marlon TJ. To be honest, when TJ comes back, that could be an interesting fight. But Sandhagen versus him would be cool. Or Dominic Cruz when back in the mix, or Pedro Munoz. There's lots of guys, man, and it's going to be interesting and exciting.
I mean, as you said, they haven't announced that fight, but where do you go with Cory Sandhagen? We kind of alluded that maybe it's Dillashaw. The fight for me personally is the one we were supposed to see before, with Frankie Edgar making his debut at Bantamweight. Is Frankie just picked up a win at his debut at 135? Sandhagen's moved on with this win here against Marlon Moraes. Why not make the fight now? Because Frankie Edgar, he's still a legend in the sport, a decent name, and it was, as I said, a fight they're supposed to make. Why not make it finally now at 135 with some near title implications on the line?
Yeah, I actually forgot about that, to be honest. Yeah, Frankie did fight at 35, and he got the win over Pedro in a really close fight, if I remember correctly. He's a legend. Frankie, I love Frankie. Give him that fight. I think it's a great match. Yeah, it'd be a number one contender fight for sure.
Yeah, I mean, there's just so much depth right now at 135. And overall, Josh, this was a really fun card the fights that went the distance had their entertaining moments. Some, good little brawls breaking out in them, some good technical stuff. But the highlight of this card, obviously, was Joaquin Buckley and his insane spinning back kick knockout that knocked out cold Impa Kasanganay on the prelims. This was one of the craziest knockouts I've ever seen in the history of the sport. Dana White said this was like the most retweeted thing that the UFC has ever put out on Twitter, which is crazy in that aspect. I mean, obviously, one huge win for Joaquin Buckley, gets himself out there as a guy that's been grinding away and finally some recognition. But a lot of people are saying this is the greatest knockout of all time. First of all, do you think it is, Josh? Because I don't think quite as spectacularly, yes, but I think stakes obviously have to be in the running of greatest of all time knockout.
I mean, it's just all like subjective, right? It's just personal opinion, right? But it is definitely up there. I definitely would say that it was pretty crazy to be able to pull that off, and that split second of a moment. And the crazy thing is the guy that he's fighting, I forget his name. I couldn't pronounce it even, but do you remember what it was?
Impa Kasanganay.
Impa Kasanganay, yeah, that guy. He actually did the right thing, man. He blocked and he caught the kick underhand Muay Thai style, but the only thing he did, he didn't do it. He didn't hike it up to put him off balance, or he didn't sway it away and counter. He kind of hung out there for that split second, and kudos to this guy for being able to pull that off that fast. To think of that even in that moment, spinning, heel kick to the face. It was pretty spectacular, and like I said, it was like a crazy.
Yeah, it was insane. It was really straight out of the Rob Van Dam playbook. Like, if you've ever seen Rob Van Dam wrestle, one of his counters is pretty much that. So it really took me off guard seeing it. But I think it's definitely a great knockout in terms of just how pretty it is, because it's risky too, because if you don't connect with that, Kasanganay can take your back and take the fight to the ground and look for a submission or maybe get one. So like we've seen guys try some crazy stuff before with seconds left in the round where there's not too much true risk. There was like 2.5 minutes left in that second round. So I like the creativity, especially with the risk involved, but yeah, like Joaquin Buckley. Like, this is a guy that is instantly becoming one of Dana White's favorite guys. He took his debut fight in the UFC with Kevin Holland on short notice. Now this. I mean, an amazing knockout. What else would you say is a great knockout, Josh? What's up there for you?
Off the top of my head, man, there's the Barboza one comes to mind. That the spinning heel kick on Terry Adam. That one is a classic. Masvidal over Askren, just in the sense 5 seconds in, runs in, does that. That's got to be up there. I would say, off the top of my head, those two come to mind. I'm trying to. I probably one of my favorites was Dan Henderson, Michael Bisping, and just the epic right hand and plants him in the flying elbow after. So I would say those three are definitely in contention for for anybody's top pick.
I mean, I love those as well, and I think what adds to them is, I kind of mentioned it before, is like the stakes, because Dan Henderson and Michael Bisping, they're pretty much fighting for #1 contendership at middleweight at that point in time. Jorge Masvidal and Ben Askren were having a bit of a beef. Terry Edom getting knocked out by Edson Barboza wasn't the same type of stakes, but I think stakes do matter in how great a knockout can be. Like, this was a pretty looking one, but if you knock out someone at the highest level, like how Henderson knocked out Bisping, I think that does add a lot to it. And hopefully for Buckley, he keeps growing up the ranks in the UFC. But do you think stakes matter to how spectacular a knockout can be, Josh?
It just makes it more appealing for the viewer, I think. You know what I mean? Because more eyes are on it. There's more at stake and whatnot. But I think once you're in the cage, two guys are going in there. A beautiful knockout is a beautiful knockout, no matter if there's 10 people watching or 100,000. You know what I mean? So it just depends on the viewership.
Yeah, I think it does. I mean, this was a sensational knockout, and congrats to Joaquin Buckley really putting his name out there. This guy's been grinding away for a while and had himself quite a big 2020. With the rest of UFC on Fight Island 5, Josh, anything else really stick out to you, catch your eye?
What was I'm trying to think of the other one. That one kind of like took over everything, you know what I mean? As far as remembering anything. But yeah, I was just that one was amazing, and then I was so keened in on the Moraes and Sandhagen fight, and that one, Sandhagen looked amazing, man, and he's a force to be reckoned with at that division, because like I said, he's a huge bantamweight. He's super talented everywhere, knows how to use his range. When he fought Sterling, it just, I mean, Sterling's a stud too, one of the best in the world, but Sterling, kind of got a better position on him really early and capitalized on it and got that choke. I would love to see that fight play out again and go a bit longer and see, what Sandhagen can do if he did get out of that position, but. That's one that stuck out to me the most.
Yeah, I mean, really, that's what I think a lot of people were expecting the main event to be. Go a little longer, maybe a bit more competitive, but that's, just MMA. You can write it, think about it, put it down on paper, but until they step inside the octagon or a cage, things are going to be totally different. And then the Buckley knockout. I mean, we had some Canadian content. KB Buller debuted for the UFC on short notice, but fortunately got knocked out in the first round to British veteran Tom Breeze. That was pretty much about it. There was a couple interesting debut there with Driscoll Duplessis. He used to fight for KSW and was a champion in EFC out in his home country of South Africa. But all in all, a pretty fun show. One of the better shows I thought of the year, Josh.
Yeah, it was entertaining. There was a lot of action-packed fights, and Barboza had a fight. He won as well too, and I love watching him fight. Yeah, man, it was a good card.
It was definitely a good card, and then that sets us up moving to what I think is going to be one of the better Fight Island cards that aren't pay-per-views. It's UFC on Fight Island 6. Brian Ortega returns for the first time in about 2 years to take on the Korean zombie Chan Sung Jun. I mean, Josh, this one really feels like one of the most exciting fights that's happened this year. Two guys that can go out there, put on utter wars. We know zombies backgrounds like that. We know from the last fight we saw Brian Ortega in, this guy's got insane toughness. He wanted to keep fighting with a destroyed, broken orbital bone before the doctor prevented him from continuing back out 2 years ago in Toronto. I mean, this is a fight that now has some beef with it, with Brian Ortega slapping Chan Sung Jung's translator from an interview that he didn't like the comments that were coming from him back in February. So, I mean, there's a little bit more intrigue in the fight, and I think this fight's going to be just sensational.
Yeah, this definitely has all the makings for one hell of a scrap. Both guys are so mentally strong and tough. Neither one will look for a way out and quit. Both equally skilled. Both the guys on the ground are both wizards, and on the feet, they showcase their striking. Some of the best in the world. Ortega is the interesting thing is here to see Ortega come off that loss, his first loss, his only loss in his career, and it was such a you know a battered beating from Holloway. I mean, Ortega showed his toughness and spirit and skills too at times. He definitely landed a lot of good shots on Holloway, but be interesting to see how he comes back from this one. I'm expecting him to come back even better, just because I think he has that mentality, and he won't lose that confidence. But yeah, the stylistically, this makes for a really really good match. I don't know where this could go. It's obviously going to start in the feet like all fights do, but both guys jiu-jitsu, equally impressing, and well, it might be one of those fights that kind of like neutralize on the ground, and we see a stand-up war.
Yeah, I mean, if it goes to the stand-up war, I think that favors the Korean Zombie, because this guy got the nickname Zombie for just taking punishment, not being able to get knocked down. Obviously, that chin's kind of eroded over time, but known for just turning fights into brawls and into instant classics. I think Ortega has the grappling advantage, but it's just really, I think, the mental side for Ortega is coming in there and knowing, if I get into those brawls and take those shots to the face, like, how am I going to hold up? What's going to happen? Because 2 years away, that's like a USADA suspension. He hasn't had that. He's had the messed up eye. He tore his ACL. He's now back. I mean, what's your longest layoff, Josh? And like, when you get in there, like, it's got to feel kind of like getting back on a bicycle for the first time.
Yeah, when you get back on a bike, it's quick, right? You get right back on it and it's easy goings. But my longest layoff is about a year or so. And yeah, I came back from injuries and canceled fights and whatnot. And it sucks, man. It really sucks. The longer you're off, they say the ring rust isn't really a thing, or some people say it is a thing, some people say it isn't. I do feel it is to a certain degree. Depends on the person. Because rounds at the gym aren't quite the same, obviously, as being there in the real thing. But he's tough, man. Like he didn't look for a way out in that fight with Holloway. He's beaten. He still wanted to fight. He's I mean, 2 years is a long time, right? And so like fighters in this day and age, they take 4, 5, 6 months off, and they're completely different fighters in that time. They've improved so much, so I can only imagine what he's done in 2 years. So it'll be interesting to see what he's like when he comes out after that long of a layup.
I think both guys have gotten so much better in that 2-year period that Ortega's been off. Like, we've seen what Zombie's been able to do with picking up a quick win over Molcano and then Frankie Edgar, and now he gets this Ortega fight. And we don't know what we're going to expect, but I would assume just the amount of training that Ortega's done. But you talked about cage rust and, it being, a real thing, and some people not saying it is, but did you kind of feel like it was there? And like, how long for you, once you had your first fight back, do you feel that rust kind of went away?
Yeah, my thing was just like when I had a long time off of injury and I was so eager to get back, but then things kept falling apart, and I had like 5 fights fall through in 5 months. And by the time I got in the cage, I was just so mentally and physically exhausted. I didn't even like, I wasn't there mentally or physically like I should be in a fight. You know what I mean? So that really sucked. But yeah, I think the longer the fight goes, the more you'll settle in. That first round, especially that first 2 minutes, 3 minutes, is you want to get out there, and after, and you start maybe putting a little bit too much pop on your punches, and you're throwing shit to try and knock them out, and then you kind of settle in, and then you feel it, and you get in that kind of flow state, and you just go. And so I say that first couple minutes is going to be the main hurdle for being out that long.
Yeah, I think it's you just got to get the adrenaline going, maybe take a couple shots, and then I think you would hopefully get back. I mean, I'm just speaking from what I've seen. Obviously, you'd know better. Having being in there, but I mean, we also know that these guys are some of the best athletes in the world, and Ortega was always a top tier athlete, with some of the wins he got. So I would assume it would take him maybe a round and a half to get back into that Brian Ortega vibe. But like we said, this is going to be a real exciting fight. It could turn into that total scrap that you'd see like in a video game, or it could be a real competitive grappling match. So that's what I think makes this fight so much more intrigue. And plus the bit of dislike that these two had, I think adds to that fight as well.
Yeah. Anytime there's actual real tension, and not stuff that you can totally tell is staged and fabricated. It kind of adds another element to excitement to the fight. That can also, change people's emotions in the fight, and for better or worse. Some guys, fight better when they're angry. Some guys don't. They can't control and they start making mistakes. So that's always interesting to see how it plays out once they get in the cage.
I think the main events we've had on Fight Island have been sensational. We'll be topped off next weekend with UFC 254, or 2 weeks from this this coming weekend, UFC 254. But this is one of the better main events we've had all year in MMA. So I can't wait for it. And then moving along to Bellator, they made their debut in Paris, France, this past Saturday with Tim Johnson taking on Czech Congo in the main event. I mean, it wasn't the greatest fight, but at least there wasn't any hometown cooking. Tim Johnson won a decision over the Frenchman Congo, and definitely Johnson's got himself running for being the number one contender for Bellator's heavyweight title against Ryan Bader.
Yeah, I didn't get to see the fights they were on during the day because the time difference, so I missed it. So I just watched the highlights afterwards. But yeah, Johnson, man, he's that guy that kind of just crept in there, and he's a sleeper, and he's really had a resurgence in his career, and having beat win over Czech Congo. Now I think he's got a win over Mitch Rion as well.
Yep.
And another pretty big name. So he's a guy that's just kind of came out of nowhere, and he's popping off big wins now and making a name for himself. So, and especially a win against the hometown boy in France for the first time ever, and out there on a big show. So it's a huge win for him.
It was definitely a big win. I mean, that was the main event of a card kind of broken up into a CBS Sports Network version, which featured them in the main event, Michael Venom Page, and well, when MVP fights, it's always a lot of intrigue, like what's he going to do and what kind of flashy stuff's going to happen with MVP. But not a lot of flash in this performance from Michael Venom Page, as he took on a tough Scotsman in Ross Houston. And, I mean, he won a decision, but you really got to feel that for Michael Venom Page, he needs to step up the level. I mean, yes, Houston was a champion in Cage Warriors and whatnot, but if Venom Page wants to be in the running to take on the Douglas Lima who he's calling out for, he needs to step it up and quit kind of playing with guys. This was kind of a drag, dull performance from MVP.
Yeah, he gets, the guy's super awkward, right, and very talented and very good at what he does. But I think it was people kind of saying he's not fighting a high-level competition just because they didn't know who this guy was, because he's not a household name really. But the guy is actually a very good fighter. So that, regardless of the win, it's a big win for sure against, I think he was 8-0, I believe, wasn't he?
He was, yes. And a former champion of Cage Warriors.
Yeah, so definitely the guy was no can like he has fought in the past. But yeah, as far as namesake, a step up in namesake with the skill set behind it is what he needs, to get a Lima rematch. I'm just trying to think off the top of my head, like somebody like a Lorenz Larkin or something like that would be, a big fight for him. And that maybe get a win over him would give him a rematch against Lima. But I would love to see that fight again, just because I'm a huge Lima fan, and that was there's another huge knockout we could talk about right there that was memorable.
Yeah, for sure. That was an insane knockout. I mean, for me, I think, as you said, Lorenz Larkin's a perfect opponent for MVP. I would personally like to see another fight with Paul Daly. I think it makes a lot of sense. Bellator loves the international expansion. That fight didn't happen in England. I believe it didn't happen in England, if memory serves me right. That has to happen in England. Two of the top Brits that the promotion has. Paul Daly's a British MMA legend, and MVP's got such a following. They have to have that fight in the UK at some point. I think there's a rematch that's warranted. I mean, Daly was pulled from his last fight because he had a weight-cutting issue. But Daly's a guy that can always bring it. I know MVP fights that weird style, kind of makes you want to throw your offense so he can counter-strike. But I think Daly would learn from his lessons and maybe make it a much more entertaining fight.
Yeah, it was weird that, that when they did fight, it was more of a wrestling match, which nobody would have predicted that.
From the Brits, too.
From the Brits and both strikers, and Daly, who made a name off like hating wrestlers because they were just wet blankets, and even when he lost to guys like Koscheck and whatnot. So yeah, that fight was totally did not go how I thought it would go. So a rematch I think could be cool, and like you said, in England or something like that over there would be a huge draw for them.
Yeah, so that was the rest of Bellator's European little venture they had. 2 shows in Italy and then the 1 show last weekend in France, but they are back stateside for the foreseeable future in Unkinsville, Connecticut at beautiful Mohegan Sun Arena, which starts this upcoming Thursday, 48 hours from now, where this is really the showing, the debut of the CBS network deal for Bellator, as Chris Cyborg will defend her women's featherweight championship against Arlene Belcow. I mean, a lot of people don't know a lot about Belcow. I mean, she's fought in Bellator for a while, and she's only really lost twice to Julia Budd and once to Marlos Kunin. So, I mean, those are top-tier names in women's MMA or at that weight class. And, I mean, Cyborg's obviously, we know what her track record is, but Belcow gets the shot here. Could be looking to be another champion from Australia, but this is a huge card here for Bellator with a lot of great talent on here. Ricky Bandejas is on there. Patricky Pitbull's on here. This is finally the showing off for Bellator, and they get a break as well too, Josh, because this is supposed to go up against an NFL game, which isn't happening. It's been rescheduled to Monday, and there's supposed to be a presidential debate, which isn't happening. So Bellator has Thursday all to themselves. So a huge win for Scott Coker and Bellator.
Yeah, it's fortunate that those 2 things are canceled to take some viewers away. But yeah, it's I'm excited to see the CBS Sports Network, the debut on there. I think that'll be great for the Bellator company and all the fighters. And yeah, it should be good. Cyborg, man, like Cyborg, she's, in my opinion, the best girl to ever do it. To be honest, I don't know how you could really argue it. People say Amanda Nunes because she knocked her out, but overall career-wise, just and the accomplishments she's had, she's got to go down as the best, if not, arguably one of the best. And I don't know a whole lot about her opponent. Like you said, her 2 losses are to Julia Budd and Conan, both, really, really good, big names in the sport. So her only losses are to no slouches. So, but it's hard at that division with girls. There's not a lot. There's the shallow talent pool. So it's for any of those girls coming up. It's very easy to kind of make a name, and you can in a couple wins and you're already in title contention. You can do big things in the sport. So we'll see if she can capitalize on this huge opportunity for her against Cyborg.
Well, I think she's the perfect opponent for the main event of your first real CBS Sports Network show. Like, as I say, this is in the proper North American time slots. They've had 2 cards already, but some people may have not caught that, and one was in a Thursday afternoon. But looking at, Belcow, as we said, she's only had those losses, but most of her wins, she's had 7 of her 13 wins come by way of knockout. She's got a boxing background. So if you want to see Cyborg brawl or strike with someone, Arlene Belcow's right there for you, so can be an exciting thing. And when, both girls let the hands go, or anyone lets the hands go, Katie bar the door, excitement pure happens. And I think that makes it for an interesting main event, especially for someone in Belcow who's trying to get her name out there. We don't know a lot about her, but looking at this card, though, Josh, I mean, we've talked before. Bellator's been signing a lot of top-tier talent from the regional scene. In the co-main event, Jaleel Willis is taking on Patricky Pitbull. He just recently won the LFA welterweight title. He's moving down to 155. Ricky Bandejas is on this card. Heavyweight Sean Teeds making his Bellator debut. I mean, this is the coming out party in the sense of you have one of your top-tier stars, but you're seeing the future and next generation of Bellator this upcoming Thursday.
Yeah, they're starting to put these cards together, really, really nicely, and a lot of names on there, a lot of big fights. The one obviously as a bantamweight looking forward to is the Ricky Bandejas and Higo fight. One thing about Bandejas, man, he fights tough guys, man. He does not shy away from any tough task for sure. He's fought, the who's who in the division so far, and he's got another tough one in Higo. So. I remember he trains with the Pitbull brothers, so he's one of the top bantamweights too. That should be an interesting one, especially with Ricky coming off the loss to Pettis. We'll see how he comes back. But yeah, the whole card, man. Like you said, it's I'm excited for it, and I can't wait to see it. And see what the results are.
I'm excited for it as well, just to see this. This is really like the launch of Bellator under Scott Coker 2.0 era. I think that's what's is more exciting for me. A lot of the talent and that Willis Pitbull fight I think is going to be real exciting. I mean, Pitbull hasn't fought since New Year's in Ryzen when he went out in the tournament for the lightweight Grand Prix. So, he's had tons of time to get ready for this. Maybe has some pent-up frustration. And, I mean, for Jaleel Willis, what a debut. Hey, we signed you to Bellator. You're fighting one of the bigger names we have in our promotion and one of the toughest guys out there in Patricky Pitbull.
Yeah, that's a huge task for your first ever fight in company, but it also is a huge opportunity because a win over a guy like that and somebody that's the Pitbull brothers, they're huge names in the sport. That would be a huge feather in your cap, and automatically you're at the top already in the division.
Yeah, I'm excited for this card. I'm excited for Thursday night MMA from Bellator. I mean, they're totally on their own island with a lot of eyeballs in the MMA world on themselves. So I'm excited for this. Should be real fun. And then there's a couple more cards. Like Bellator's just pumping out all these cards and picking up all the momentum they kind of lost at the start of this pandemic. But Bellator is really starting to make a nice run here towards the end of 2020.
Yeah, man, they're making up for lost time in that first couple months there that they were off, and they're banging out shows. Like you'll see, I know all of October, and I know a lot of November's already booked, and I'm sure going into December will be too. So they have a lot of shows pumping out, and I'm excited.
I'm excited as well. And Josh, I was looking at some stats about yourself, and I see we're about 3 days removed from you being involved in the sport of mixed martial arts for 11 years. 11 years ago, on October the 10th, 2009, you made your professional MMA debut. And look where you are now. I mean, you're in Bellator, 2-0 there. You fought for a Bantamweight championship in World Series of Fighting. You call fights with me for BTC. We're doing this show. I mean, this venture in MMA has really worked out for you. But tell us about what those experiences were like back on October the 10th, 2009.
Damn, man, you're dating me. I'm getting old, man. For real. Yeah, 11 years, that's craziness. I still remember it like it was, only 2 or 3 years ago. I was so new to this sport, man. I started training. I did a few jiu-jitsu tournaments. I did about 5 of those. I trained for, I don't know, about a year or so. And then I was just training at Iron Tiger, it was called back then, House of Champions now, with Alan. And he goes, hey, and there's a pro fight in 2 weeks. Do you want to take it? MMA at 145. And I'm just like, sure, and it'll be televised on the Score. So my first ever fight, I get to be on TV, and I had no boxing, no kickboxing, no Muay Thai, no wrestling in high school. So I had no real, competition experience in martial arts other than a few jiu-jitsu tournaments that I did. So I took the fight, and I went in there at 145. I was walking around like 148. And I thought, like, oh my God, I got to lose 3 pounds. What am I going to do? I had no idea about weight cutting at the time. So I walked and I went on the scales. I see my opponent, and he looked really skinny and all like kind of like depleted. And I was like, oh man, this guy's, I'm gonna kill this guy. And then I seen him in the cage when I got in there the next day, and he was all, ballooned up and enormous. And I was like, Jesus Christ. But man, the experience, I'll never forget it, because it was such a whirlwind of adrenaline, man. I remember just kind of going out there, and I hit him with a knee and the tie clinch, and I sent him like 10 feet flying back on his back, and I was like, oh my God, did I just do that? And I like rushed in. I remember went for a suplex, and then I went for like a stupid arm bar, and he got out of it, and then we had a bit of a scramble. And then I remember after the first round, I was just exhausted, and I was just thinking, how am I gonna get through this? And I went out there the second round, and I hit him with a huge combination, just super sloppy brawling style, and I cut him open, and he was still standing there, and I was just exhausted. My arms I could barely lift up, and I'm just thinking, how am I going to get through this? And then about 30 seconds later, I just tagged him with a huge overhand right and knocked him out. And I was more relieved that the fight was over than I won. But I still remember to this day, like, feeling of just like sheer like joy and victory. And I still remember, like, as I won, I turned around and I see my dad. He was sitting like third row from the cage, and he like jumped up and freaked out, and I can still remember that in my head. And that was what got me hooked, man. That moment, that was like, a lot of people, it could have went the opposite way for me. I could have been on the receiving end of that knockout to start off my career, and I could have went downhill from there. But it worked out well for me. And then I got the knockout of the night bonus. And the benefit of it was my fight was on TV, and they replayed it all the time on the score, like on a loop. So it was getting played like almost every day. I had people calling me like, "Oh yeah, I just seen your knockout again." So I was pretty fortunate that to have that such a early stage in my career, right when I'm starting out, which a lot of guys don't even have today after 10 fights or so maybe. But yeah, man, it was so memorable, and it led me here.
Yeah, it's crazy because you are a part of the original wave of MMA in Ontario where the score was still around. They had like three different, they were like the first network that really jumped on MMA being a thing. They had obviously the score fighting series was a thing, but they had your W1 and other promotions on there. They eventually picked up the Canadian rights to the WEC, but I mean, that was a huge part of it. Is like a TV network was willing to broadcast all this MMA and get not only just fights out there and the sport out there to new eyes, but young Canadian talent like yourself.
Yeah, it was great, man. And you know what? I was actually the second wave of fighters, to be honest.
True. Yes.
My guys before the guys that I learned from, and like the Justin Ruckmans and Adrian Woolies, Richard Nanku and Antonio Carvalho, all those guys, even the Hominics and Stouts and all those guys that were around much longer than I was. Those are the guys that kind of started off, and it wasn't on the TV as much back then, right? And then it kind of became a bigger thing. And then yeah, like you said, the score started picking up all the promotions events and filming them, and then they did their own. So yeah, I was lucky to be a part of that, and then I kind of grew with it. And the score was a big part of my career, man. I had a lot of fights with them, and I got a lot of footage with them, and they were great. And it's too bad that they didn't stick around, and Rogers screwed that up for us, but that's how it goes.
Trust me, we all missed the score. The score was a valuable television station, not just for MMA, but Canadian sports as well. They had a lot of university content on there and did it probably the best out of any network that has been around doing it. So we missed the score very much. Score fighting series was awesome. Brought a lot of great talent in the cage, but a lot of great broadcasters. I know Robin Black started out doing there. I mean, the success of those shows were huge because I know Now Access, but HDNet, they picked up the rights to cover those shows as well. So the quality was there if HDNet, Now Access, was willing to show that and broadcast Canadian MMA to the United States.
Yeah, and they did a great job, fabulous job. The production, like the pre-fight stuff, the post-fight stuff, the commentators like Robin, it kicked off his stuff too. They had, Mauro Ranallo on there and Ramdeen. They had a whole bunch of guys on there, and they did amazing job, man. That's why it was such a shame when they, got the kibosh. Brendan Fife, he was the man in charge at the time running it, and he did a great job. And it just sucks that, it's not around anymore, but that's the way it goes.
I do miss it, but you know what? There is a lot of great Canadian MMA content, regional promotions here in Canada. They haven't been able to put on shows due to the pandemic, but a lot of great Canadian fighters have been able to be created in some of these promotions like a BTC or a Unified or a PFC, and we'll get to see some of them this upcoming weekend to close it out here, Josh, as this Friday, Aaron Jeffery, we touched on this a little bit last week, Aaron Jeffery's in the main event, the first Canadian to ever main event an LFA show, and his Niagara Top Team teammate, Teshay Gouthro, taking a fight on short notice, will be coming out there. I mean, a lot about Teshay, you train with him, we've called some of his fights, but this is a real great opportunity for those guys, but I'm happy for not only Aaron but especially Teshay to get this opportunity on Fight Pass, and a guy that can always put on an exciting scrap against a tough guy in Justin Wetzel.
Yeah, it's a great opportunity for him. I was talking to him about it. Said he had, might have a fight opportunity coming up, and he was just kind of waiting to jump on something because there's, like you said, nothing's going on in Ontario right now. So if any Canadians that want to fight, they're probably gonna have to look stateside to get on something. So it was a great opportunity for him. I think it's a good matchup for him. It's a lot of eyes will be on it. Being an LFA, they put on great shows on UFC Fight Pass. Get to be on the same card as a teammate, which is always fun. Yeah, man. So I think it's a great opportunity for him, and a chance to beat a guy that's got a pretty good record, 5-1. Comes from a good camp, so it's no easy fight, but it's definitely a winnable fight for him. So I think it's a great opportunity.
I mean, this fight for Teshay can go either way. We saw in his last fight against Ariel Zuniga at BTC 8 in Niagara, like it was kind of a good, more grappling match than his pro debut, where he was just letting his hands go and showing off all his boxing, which, I mean, that obviously brings the fans to their feet and set the tone for that night back in June of 2019 to be an exciting card. But he can do the same against Justin, where it can be either he can match him for grappling, or it can be a real exciting fight where Justin's last fight was just 37 seconds. He hasn't fought since. He's had some bad luck with opponents falling out and, a pandemic canceling a couple cards for him. But I'm excited for that fight. And then Aaron in the main event. I mean, this is the opportunity that Aaron's needed for quite a while. As we said, it's on Fight Pass. This is the biggest fight he's had since he was on the Contender Series. And he's up against a real tough guy with a great, Division I wrestling background. Coming up from the state of Pennsylvania and Andre Petrosky, but every fight Aaron's taking right now, it's a step up in competition. He passed the last one against Bruno Assis with flying colors, and I would expect him to do the same this upcoming Friday.
Yeah, it's a big opportunity for him, and I think a win here can definitely put him right back into that talk to maybe get signed or a short notice call to UFC or another big organization if he chooses. Yeah, I think his opponent, I think he's 5-0, I believe it is. Is that
correct? 5-0, yeah.
5-0, and so he's got a great record. Looking at who he's beat, he hasn't beat that top quality of guys yet. So it's kind of hard to tell with these guys that are 5-0 and haven't really beat many big name guys yet, because is their skill on par with their record, or are they kind of beating up lower level guys just to build up the record, or are they really, really good? You don't really know, right? So it's kind of hard to tell. So, but anytime you beat an undefeated guy, it's a bonus. Taking a guy's O away is a big thing. So I think it'll be a big night for Aaron, and I do expect him to come out with the win for sure. And this will be, I think, a major win for him.
Well, for Aaron, I mean, we talked about he had that tough loss in the Contender Series to Brendan Allen, who was really a UFC level fighter that was still fighting in the LFA and other regional promotions. And since that loss, it's really guided Aaron in the right direction. And sometimes a loss does that for you. I mean, you can speak from experience, Josh. When you have a tough loss, does it really just ignite your mindset and a new drive and a new appreciation for the sport?
Yeah, man, it all depends on the person. It all depends on the individual and how you go about it and how you react to it. It's just your mindset. And I know Aaron, he's a worker, man. He's a hard worker. And yeah, I think it drove him to just be better. You learn from it. You really do. And in a way for me, it was actually a big of a relief, because I got to 10-0, and then I finally had my first loss, and it was almost like carrying that weight of undefeated. I mean, you just always expected to win. I mean, obviously you want to win every single fight, but it kind of alleviates that pressure a little bit that you put on yourself, because there's really no pressure unless you put it on yourself. But I think he learned from his loss, and he's shown that he's getting better every time, and you'll expect another level of Jeffries in this one.
I think it's interesting that you bring up the point that, when you're undefeated and everyone expects you to win whatever, but you felt the pressure personally, because you see that in team sports, like when the Patriots or the Indianapolis Colts one year, they were going on the verge of being undefeated, and they decided, no, we're going to take the loss now, so that pressure's gone, and we can focus on winning a championship. I mean, you hear about it in team sports, but a lot in combat sports, it's more, you think they just buy into their hype and they want to always be undefeated, go out, for legacy standards. You've seen it with Floyd Mayweather, but it's got, as you said, it adds an extra burden on you. And I think sometimes a loss is the best thing for a person.
Yeah. The difference with the team sports is, like, I have a bad day. My goalie can bail me out. My defense can bail me out. You know what I mean? But we have a bad day in the cage, it's all on you. So that's what the difference is, the biggest difference. But yeah, you're right. I think that, a loss, can rejuvenate you, can reset your mind, can make you become less complacent, make you work harder. All these things, if you put them in the right perspective, it can make you a much better fighter in person.
I totally agree, and I think this LFA show will be very exciting, especially nice to see some Canadians on there. As you said, LFA always puts on banging shows, obviously quality fighters that are the next step to the major promotions, whether it's UFC or Bellator now, because Bellator's been raiding a lot of the talent that's from LFA. So, LFA, they're breeding champions for tomorrow, and you get to see them today. So I'm excited for that. And Josh, we're coming to out of time right here. Before I let you go, any shout-outs you'd like to send, because it was a big weekend in MMA, and this is an even bigger, more exciting weekend with some good regional shows, and then, of course, the UFC card and Bellator as well.
No, man, just I'm always loving the MMA content on here. Shout outs to all the families. Happy Thanksgiving. Make sure you see your families, or if you can't see them, give them a call or text or something like that. And that's about it. Catch me at Gentleman J Hill. Always my social media. We always plug it. You know, I guess what we got to do nowadays. But
yeah,
that's
definitely. Yeah, well, I mean, I saw you post that you've got some exciting fight news coming down the pipeline. Can't wait to hear about it. Hopefully, we can hear about it on here.
Yeah, the moment I can actually release it publicly, then we're putting it out there.
Yeah, dang right. I mean, we're all excited for you, because that'd be 3 fights in a year or so.
Yeah, but yeah, I fought February, August, and then I'm gonna be fighting again in 2020. So I like it, man. I want busy. I want 3 or 4 fights a year. That'd be perfect.
I'm sorry, you fought in February, and February feels like 2 years ago at this rate. So it totally warped my mind there. I'm like, yes. COVID. Yeah, damn COVID, eh? It's just whatever. But yeah, you know what? You've had so much, start-stop type stuff with your career. It's nice to see you finally being active and get 3 fights in a year. I mean, which is always, I think, every fighter's goal, at least 3.
Oh yeah, man, it's great being active. I mean, hey, I'm not getting any younger. I got to get it in while I can and make the money while I can, and have fun while I can, because you can't fight forever. So, many fights as I can, bro. 3 or 4 a year would be perfect.
Exactly. So we can't wait to hear, the details on that when it's right to be dropped. But that's going to do it for this episode. Definitely remember, subscribe, leave a comment, because without you, we can't really keep making these shows. And you, the MMA fan, are the ideal fan base. I mean, you guys get a lot of slack on the internet, but you're one of the more passionate, loyal fans of any sport that's out there. So without your support, we can't continue to make these. But Josh, until next Tuesday, same bat time, same bat channel, I'll be talking to you again, breaking down this upcoming week's realm of MMA.
Cheers, homie. Sounds good. See you later.
Have a good one, everyone.